So, hi everyone, I'm Dominica DeGrandis, and today I'm going to be talking about a topic that I get a lot of questions on. This talk actually comes in response to many people asking about how to deal with important but neglected work and also the dependencies that occur between so many different teams when we have a large organization that is organized and split up into many different small agile teams. I'm going to be using Mural here. This is not your typical PowerPoint presentation. It's just one big page that I'm going to navigate on. For those of you who are unfamiliar with my work, I work for Tasktop. I'm a principal flow advisor at Tasktop. And what that means is I work to help organizations improve the flow improve their velocity, improve their throughput across their whole value stream. And I'm the author of Making Work Visible, Exposing Time Theft to Optimize Work and Flow. And flow is such an essential element to consider. And I use the 5 Thieves of Time to bring that to life. So if you're unfamiliar with them, let me just run the 5 Thieves of Time through you really quickly here. On your left in yellow, this is time thief unplanned work. These are all the interruptions that impact your day, right? Unplanned work is interruptions is the foundation of unplanned work. And then in blue here is thief conflicting priorities. This is when people are not sure if they're supposed to do A or B, and they're asking, what's the priority? Are we supposed to work on A or B? And the answer comes back as both, then you know that this time thief is trolling you. In orange here, this is the time thief dependencies, invisible or unknown dependencies. This is often when you like, oh, by the way, didn't you hear about this database schema change or something that's going to impact you? When we're reliant on others in order to complete our work, then we have a problem with time thief dependencies. In green here, and this is what I'm going to focus on in just a minute, is thief neglected work. This is important work, but it doesn't get the love or the attention it needs. And so it ends up being delayed more often than not. And then on the right here is the ringleader of all the time thieves, and that's thief too much work in progress. Because in one way or another, all the other time thieves have a role to play in us having too much work on our plate, too much work in progress. And so I like to use these time thieves, bring visibility to them so that they can spark or promote conversations on how to improve. Right, so today we're going to consider neglected work and unplanned work, because neglected work, it sits in the system. People know it needs to be done. It's important work, but it doesn't tend to be prioritized over the more business requests, the revenue generating requests. I think of neglected work as revenue protection work, and it's often competing with revenue generation requests from business people because it's it's going to perhaps protect or generate revenue over protecting some of our valuable assets. So here's an exercise that I do. I work a lot with teams, and when we try and improve flow, we get together and do some exercises to bring visibility to the problems so then we can figure out what to do about them. And in this exercise, we list out on the left here, neglected work, what are the things, what is important work that needs to be worked on that is neglected, that just doesn't ever seem to have enough prioritization, enough support to do. And this is just an example of when I last asked this question to a team last week. This is what they came up with. They don't have enough time to polish off the design. They don't have enough time to refactor their code base. Security requirements are not getting the attention they deserve. And we're really struggling on how to be more effective working remotely. And so those are examples, and people will list that out. And then we ask the question, okay, well, what about your unplanned work? What kind of unplanned work do you have? And here's what people said: production issues. We are interrupted frequently by problems in production. So we have to context switch away from the work that we were doing to handle this unplanned work. Unplanned work delays planned work. And if that's a problem for you, then bringing visibility to unplanned work can help you have this conversation why you might need to allocate more time in your schedule for unplanned work. Other examples of unplanned work are, configuration changes, support work, help desk work, that kinds of things. In this case, they had some licensing issues. And so the question is, does neglected work morph into unplanned work in your organization? And if so, I'm not sure how many hands might be going up right now, but if so, then what to do about it? How do we ensure that we have important but neglected work? How do we ensure that gets prioritized right along with all the revenue generating requests from business folks, so that we can get our code refactored, take care of those security requirements, take care of any kind of cross-training or other important neglected work that needs to be done. Otherwise, what happens? It turns into an emergency, it gets escalated, and now you have some kind of unplanned work that you have to deal with. And this is a topic that we see in Mick Kirsten's book, Project to Product, Project to Product, How to Survive and Thrive in the Age of Digital Disruption with the Flow Framework. And boy, are we in an age of disruption right now with this global pandemic. This is a very valuable resource for you, and one that really brings to light this need to allocate capacity for neglected work. As part of the Flow Framework, there is an approach, a metric called flow distribution. And flow distribution is a way to measure the different categories of your work. And you'll see its features, defects, risks, and debt. There are 4 types of work here. And debt in particular is where thief neglected work falls. Debt, this is the maintenance, this is the security, well, security would fall under risks, but debt is all the investments that we need to make to improve our future delivery. So this could be training, cross-training. This could be fixing technical debt. This could be keeping the lights on, or any kind of improvement such as automation in our pipeline. Flow distribution brings a clear distinction to the ratio of all the work that we're doing, broken down into features. These would be business requests that come through, revenue generation type of work, defects or bugs in production or other environments. Risk here means things related to major business risks such as security breaches, government mandates like GDPR, or taxes, major business risks. So with flow distribution, If you can categorize your work in this way, you can start to make the trade-offs clear. And this will help you influence strategies and the strategic direction that your organization needs to go into. Over here, I've identified these for you: features, revenue generation, defects, risk, and debt. So keep in mind those four categories. And are you able to categorize that work now so that you can see the ratio for poor neglected work, right? Are you do you have enough bandwidth to handle that important work? Or does it just morph into unplanned work? I used to be a build engineer. I used to do a lot of configuration management, source code control, branching and merging strategies. And then I ended up managing a release team and a build team. And we would do, so Corbis, by the way, is Bill Gates's other company. He no longer owns it now, but this would be back in 2005, 2006, 2007. We were doing quarterly releases. And after every big release, we would inevitably have hot fixes, emergencies, unplanned work that we would have to fix. And because we never rolled back, we always just rolled forward, we had to fix them on the spot. And so they were quick and dirty fixes, but at least it kept the system up and running and stable. And we said, oh, we'll go back and we'll fix those Band-Aids, we'll improve them. But we never got time to do that because we were always so focused on fixing production bugs and doing new features. And what would happen, another release would come out 3 to 6 months later, and now we'd have to do a hot fix for the hot fix that we did 4 to 6 months ago. And so allocating time for neglected work under the flow item type of debt can help you very much bring visibility to that and have the discussion with leadership on why it's important. Like, you have to change the oil in your car every so often, otherwise the car breaks down, right? Same thing with our health. We have to take time out to care, do some self-care with our health, otherwise there's disease. And so I'm going to move on to unplanned work and talk about making that visible and then measuring value. One way to make unplanned work visible is in this manner, is to be able to tag it somehow in your workflow system so that you can bring visibility to it. Because unplanned work delays planned work, if you can show your unplanned work, you can help others start to see, oh, we have a lot of unplanned work that happens, and do something about it. If your unplanned work is invisible and you have a lot of it, it's going to impact your planned work. It's going to delay things, right? If the boss wants to know why the platform isn't up and running yet, it was supposed to be done at the end of this month, but it's not ready yet. What do you say? You say, well, we've been really busy. If you can show all this interruptions based off of unplanned work, now you can start to have that conversation. You can through using data, show the impacts of it. So here's an example of this right here. This is a flow time and flow velocity graph. Flow time, let me define real quickly for you here, is you can look at it in days, weeks, or months, but it's how long it took to complete something, a request, from the time that you decided to do it. Once the business said, yes, let's do this thing, how long does that take? And this chart here, there's a legend on the right. We can see that the big yellow triangles here, those represent unplanned work. The circles with the dots in them represent revenue protection work. That's the debt work we talked about, whether that's technical debt or cross-training or just keeping the lights on. And then the circles, the big black circles, are revenue generation. These are the feature requests that break down into your stories. And so the vertical axis is the number of days it takes to complete something. And the horizontal axis would be the date that it finished. This is just a 1 month view here. But if you're tracking unplanned work, you'll be able to demonstrate here, look at all this unplanned work that came in during week 2 and the beginning of week 3, and look at the impact it had to how long it took to finish work. Look how much it increased the flow time. So flow time, how long it takes to do things, decreases when you have a lot of interruptions through unplanned work. And it also decreases your flow velocity, which is the number of items that you can complete. These two measures are useful in helping you make the argument for how much work in progress your team should actually have. There's an equation through Little's Law you can look at, and I'm not going to go into the details of the math right now, basically the equation is that your average WIP is going to equal your cycle time times your throughput in days. And so here is an example, because a lot of times when we look at how long things take, we just look at the average, right? But we need to look at the whole time span, because some work, like these emergencies, are done in 1 to 2 days because everybody's focused on them and they get done quickly because they're so urgent. But when we have a lot of them, then planned work's going to take longer. And using this simple equation, you could see that a data point to consider would be 37 here. And I can explain this later if you want to, but this is one clue. So if you have 137 things in work in progress right now, it's probably 100 things too much. Another metric that is very interesting to look at is flow efficiency. Flow efficiency looks at wait time and work time. It's actually the ratio between work time and wait time. Often we spend a lot of time trying to estimate how long work is going to take. But when we look at flow efficiency, when we look at this ratio, we discover that most of the time work is spent in an idle state. It's spent in a wait state, not a work state. And there's a large community out there talking about no estimates. There's a no estimate movement. And one of the reasons that we see that is because of all the wait time that is in the system for one reason or another, because of conflicting priorities, because of dependencies, because of unplanned and neglected work. There's a lot of wait time in the system. And some would say that if you're going to measure anything, measure the wait time, not so much the work time. Real quickly, I want to show you a way to look at your work item types with respect to your work in progress in your workflow system here. Again, on the right, I have debt work defined for you. It's an investment in your future delivery capability. And all the things listed here on the right would fall under the category of debt work. And you can use, you've probably heard of your WIP limits if you're using Kanban. WIP limits do not have to be just at the top of each column, right? You can have WIP limits as horizontal rows. And you could say, based on our team or our organization's capacity, this doesn't have to be at the team level. This could be at the program level too. You could say we have capacity to do, this many initiatives or this many features, so many defects, so much security work, and so much debt work. And then if you allocate and approve capacity to work on this debt work, but it doesn't ever make it to the finish line because more features and more defects come through, then there you go. There's the thorn in your side. This is one thing that business and IT leadership need to understand. If you take anything out of this talk, if there's leaders in the audience, understand the need to find some kind of balance between revenue generation work with the feature requests and the necessary debt work to protect that revenue, and how we need to make time to do that. All right, so let's move on to just doing a quick time check here. Let's move on to dependencies, because much of our wait time can be due to dependencies. I define dependencies as 3 types of dependencies. There's dependencies in architecture with components and APIs, and we can't, you know, one team could break another team's code base if they change a component that both teams use. There's dependencies on events, as in we can't, you know, we can't integrate these 2 tools until we have an API that we can access. And then there's dependencies on experts or specialists, or in this case, roles. This is a dependency matrix here, and this is an exercise that we can do to see where the most critical dependencies are between different experts in your organization. So along the vertical axis, we have a list of roles. A lot of these roles are from an infrastructure or operations group. I work a lot in the DevOps community, so I work a lot with operations teams and infrastructure teams. These are the people who are needed by others. These are the roles that get interrupted by the people. If you have to turn your head sideways to read the names, the impactors, these are people who need something in order to complete their job. So they're interrupting the others with requests. And what I'll do is I'll be on a remote call with the larger team, maybe 30 people, maybe 60 people. And we'll say, place an orange light bulb icon, you know, one of these here, at the intersection of the 2 roles where you believe that causes the biggest delay. That's our bottleneck. And when I ask that question, we'll see orange light bulbs floating all over the screen, and people placing them where they believe. And then other people can add a thumbs up if they agree with that. And when we did this exercise, somebody said courageously, wait, we need to add the business in here because we're so dependent on business people to prioritize the work that comes in, and sometimes we can't start until we get funding or budgeting. And we're doing pretty good in development. You know, we've got our pipeline set up and things are rolling pretty quickly through our agile teams, and we're doing DevOps, and so our delivery pipeline is pretty smooth. Our bottleneck is actually upstream while we're waiting on funding, we're waiting on prioritization. And so we added business to this dependency matrix, and then asked the question again. And as far as software developers were concerned, their biggest dependency was waiting on experts on the business side to fund and prioritize their work. And also here, DBAs, database admins were dependent on the business, perhaps for procurement reasons. See, the thing is that if we have a lot of, the more we scale, the more people that are involved, the more dependencies we have. The hardest thing we do is communicate between teams. And with a lot of teams, it's impossible for everybody to be aware of or be on top of all the things that others need or that they need. And so if that's the situation, then it behooves us to look at how we're organized. Are we organized in 2 pizza teams, but yet we're waiting on designers, we're waiting on business people, we're waiting on analysts? And if there's a lot of wait time, if, for example, if your flow efficiency metrics are really low, then that's an indicator that maybe it would be better for us if we increased the size of our team and brought in these specialists, these experts that we need, so that we can improve our flow time, we can improve our throughput. And that's why the idea of moving from a project-oriented structure to a product-based workflow structure can be really helpful. This in a product-driven organization, we bring the work to the people. The teams are long-standing teams. They build this, they design, build, deliver, and maintain it. They're responsible for the whole value stream. In fact, they get their funding by the value stream, not by the project. So instead of splitting people up to put them in different projects, we're having a dedicated team with all the resources and the experts that we need to work on that one value stream, which can be quite, it's a big change for a lot of people, a lot of organizations, but it's what we're seeing now. That's what's happening right now. In order for people to survive this disruption and make it through the turning point on the other side, people are going to a product-driven way of working. Changing the way we work or changing the way teams are organized is very challenging to do. There's a lot of resistance to that. And that's why our next topic that I want to bring up is the topic of psychological safety. Psychological safety. So there's this thing we call the honey-do list. You see, the problem for a spouse who can build or fix just about anything is that the other spouse provides them with a very long list of things to do. And it's hard for them to say no because they like the person who asked. They like the person who asked them. And the same is true at work. We do things especially for people whom we like. And there's a number of other reasons why we say yes all the time. Here's a poll. I ask people a lot, why do you take on more work than you have capacity to do? And here's what people say. You know, the boss, very hard to say no to the boss, right? But you can see the time thieves are all over here, right? And there's also safety or psychological safety reasons, right? They feel they can't say no. Their reputation is at stake. They want to feel valuable. They're part of the tribe, right? They can't pay the cost of saying no. They're told it must be done. They don't want to disappoint, right? We can't handle feeling guilty by saying no. We'd rather say yes than feel guilty about it. It's not safe to say no, is how many people believe. And also, you know, conflicting priorities and dependencies and all of that. The problem is, if we continue to say no, the car's going to break down, or you're going to get sick, or there's going to be disease, right? We can only do so much. It's like this freeway here. If you book yourself or you book your teams at 100% capacity utilization, then things come to a grinding halt, right? This highway only fits so many cars. You can't fit any more cars. And you can only go as fast as the slowest moving vehicle in front of you. And this is true even more in areas of high variability. And by that, I mean where you have lots of of different, lots of different things on your plate, lots of dependencies, and high variability in how long things take, like we do in, say, a support team or an operations team, where a lot of your work is unplanned. Now, we don't let our computers get to 100% capacity utilization, right? They give us a warning sign. I would argue that we take better care of not overloading our computers than we do with us, right? If we don't let our computers get to 100% capacity utilization, why do we let ourselves? Why do we do that to our teams? Right? We need to learn that if we can limit our work in progress, then the traffic will open up and things will flow a lot smoother, and we'll actually be able to complete requests faster because we won't have so much context switching. Yeah. So there's a measure here called flow load, which measures your work in progress. And you're just measuring how much load is on the team. What is the load? How much do we have? The thing about flow load is that it's a leading indicator. It's brilliant. All your other metrics, your flow time, your flow velocity, your flow efficiency, those are all trailing indicators, because you don't know how long something took to do until it's done. With flow load, when you start measuring what the load is on the teams now, you can start to see as that increases, how that your flow time will increase too. Things will take longer, because flow load, your work in progress, is a primary factor in your speed metrics because of that equation that I mentioned earlier. Right? The more stuff on your plate, the longer it takes to do. But what do we need to do in order to say no? How do we push back? And that's where flow safety comes in. This is you've heard of NPS score, Net Promoter Score. Usually it's a survey. Usually the question is something like, on a scale from 1 to 10, I would recommend you work for my company. What's the probability of me recommending you work for my company, right? That's the typical question. But you could swap those questions out to see how safe your teams feel, how safe the people on your teams are. Questions like, or statements like, on my team, failure causes inquiry, not blame, right? That's important in order to experiment. Are people open to trying new, novel ways to work, like switching to a product-centric way of working? Or are they going to be worried about being blamed? Our leadership is open to hearing bad news. As leaders out there, does your team come tell you bad news, or are you the last to find out about it when it's too late to do anything? Right? In my organization, failures are learning opportunities and messengers are not punished. We trust one another. So these comments, these questions come as a output of Westrom's typology of organizational culture. So this is a summary of 3 different kinds of cultures: pathological, bureaucratic, and generative. In a pathological culture, the messengers get shot. There's a lot of blame, right? Along with responsibilities shirked and failure leading to scapegoating, and novelty is crushed, meaning people are afraid to try new ways of working. Bureaucratic is rule-oriented, and generative is where the high performers sit. This is performance-oriented. This is where failure leads to inquiry. Failure leads us to be compassionate, if you will, and curious, right? Why did that happen? And it helps be the foundation for experimentation, because experimentation is a less resistant approach to implementing change. If you want to start finding ways to say no, start finding ways to reduce your dependencies, start finding ways to make sure that neglected work has been approved right along with that revenue protection work, then experiments are your friend. Safe to fail experiments, right? Not this, you know, we cannot fail, right? But safe to fail experiments. And here's what I'm going to leave you with is an approach to do an experiment here. Take a snapshot of this if you like. This is just an example experiment. The main things are you would have a problem statement, you have a hypothesis, you identify a time box of activities, keep it short, 4 to 6 weeks to start, and then your metrics. How are you going to measure your outcomes? How are you going to know if this experiment is trending in the right direction or not? So these are some, just an example of a way that you can experiment with that. And I think I'm just going to do a quick time check here because I think we're at time. And we want to reserve time for questions. So we can open up the floor to any questions now. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually read questions if they're in the chat. Oh, I see.
Hi, Dominica.
Hi.
We have a question from Beatrice. Hi, Dominica. Thank you for presentation. In your experience, how can we easily differentiate defects of technical debits?
Let me make sure I understand that question. How do we differentiate defects versus technical debt?
Yeah, probably she's talking about the fails, technical fails and technical debits. Technical debits is a choice. Technical defects is a consequence of the terrible architecture.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. So debt is an investment in the future, and a defect is this problem that we need to fix because there's either a production issue or a bug in the system.
Yeah. Let me see. Dominica, this is an event of agility and digital transformation. Today specifically, we will have many lectures about DevOps, site reliability engineer. Do you think that DevOps initiatives or site reliability engineer initiatives can start without an understanding what is the whole value stream, what is the end-to-end flow?
Yes, because you have to start somewhere, and you don't always have your whole end-to-end value stream identified, and you don't always have buy-in from everybody that you need. So starting where you are with what you have is the starting point. And once you do that, you can start to build the case to bring in where the bottleneck, ideally we want to identify where the bottleneck is. And so as you, I would start small, start with whoever you have support from and start capturing data.
Yeah.
So when I used to always complain that we didn't have automated testing, and that because developers used to complain, oh, the builds take too long, you know, your team's not doing what it needs to do. And when I could present the data and show them actually how long things did take, I was blown away. I got budget, I got headcount, and more importantly, I got empathy from the rest of the team. Ranting got me nowhere. So I encourage you to start doing some experiments with whoever is available with you now, wherever you're at. Start where you are.
Wonderful. Do you see some resistance from the team to bring the flow for visibility, to bring visibility for the flow?
Is there resistance? Yes, sometimes there can be, which is why we have invisible work.
How are you facing that?
Sorry, what?
How are you facing that?
Well, we investigate some of the causes, some of the underlying factors. Are people creating invisible work because there's a few reasons? It's going to take me longer to put it in the system than it will to do. And so that's always a balance. Is the benefit that we get out of making all the work visible, is that going to help us get to the next level? Or that's not where, that's not where the bottleneck is, so it doesn't really matter. Or it could be, it's in different tools and it's just hard to get out. Maybe it's in spreadsheets or something, which is a pain in the butt to work with. Or maybe there's a disagreement, and I see this a lot. There's a disagreement on priorities. Team A's priority isn't Team B's top priority. And so, but somebody on Team B may know that they have to work on this technical debt thing. And so they do it anyway. And maybe they do it at midnight, or they do it on Sunday afternoon. Right? If people can't get their work done during normal business hours and they're doing it on the weekend and at night, that is a red flag. I mean, temporarily it might be okay, but long term it's not sustainable.
Yeah. I'm trying to see the other questions. We have a lot of questions. We have a lot of thanks for you. The people really like it of your lecture. Do you think that by giving visibility to the whole flow, it can help to see silos in organizations and minimize the negative impacts of the silos?
Yes,
organizations.
That's one of the main goals. Let's look at the whole big picture. Let's measure how long it takes for each activity to occur so that we can see where the biggest delay is. Where are the biggest wait times? So we know that's where to go look at the bottleneck, and how can we then emphasize optimization at the bottleneck? Because it doesn't matter how fast your development team can go if they're not the bottleneck. If the bottleneck's upstream, then we need to go work on that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, we constantly talk about silos, but very little about how to break them. It's being in a cloud of ideas, but this is a good direction, working with flow management, with value stream management. Is the flow management done collaboratively, or it's usually left to with a specific area as IT governance or IT management?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Did you ask if the flow framework is...
The flow management,
okay,
in general, is done collaboratively for the team?
So we need support from leadership to do this. I mean, there are grassroots efforts that are helpful, but we need both top-down leadership support and bottom-up team understanding. So there needs to be more like an executive, what we call flow team, that can oversee and support teams using a flow-based approach to do their work. And the flow team would help ensure that the training occurs, ensure that teams are organized correctly. There's support there to do experiments and to take action based off of the experiment outcomes, and also provide like flow advisors. That's a good opportunity for agile coaches right now. To move into the space of like value stream architect. We're seeing this big gap right now of value stream architects that are critically needed in order, as part of this larger flow team, in order to
Yes.
help these other teams to focus on the flow of their whole value stream.
Yeah. Problem, the gap is before that, is understand what is value stream, what is the flow management.
There's training that needs to occur, especially for organizations that are project-based. They're so used to getting funded by for the project.
Yeah.
And, you know, PMO. A lot of companies now are doing away with the PMO, the portfolio management office, and they're turning it into a VMO, value management office. So
Wonderful.
we're focused on value and optimizing value, and not just a project.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. Yeah. Dominica, I'm really glad and thank you for your contribution. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
You bet. Okay. Until next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.